She didn't notice me watching. Not when she tilted her head, just so, letting her hair fall over her shoulder like she was in some damn shampoo commercial. Not when she reached for his tie, under the fairy lights and tugged it playfully like they were the only two people on that rooftop. And definitely not when she whispered something into his ear that made him grin like the cat, who already knew he was getting the cream. The wine glass was already in her hand before I even made it up the stairs. That's how fast she moved. I wasn't supposed to see it. I was supposed to be downstairs, in the lobby, asking the front desk if they could validate my parking, because Ivy forgot to tell me the rooftop needed a separate elevator. So I went down. And like a moron, I came back up. She didn't see me step out. Didn't see me freeze at the sight. That's the worst part, I think. She didn't even check. People say moments like this feel like your stomach drops, or your heart cracks, or time slows. But none of that happened. Everything stayed exactly the same. The music kept playing. The lights kept twinkling. She kept smiling. And I just stood there, holding a stupid paper gift bag with her favorite salted truffles, like I was delivering dessert to a crime scene. I counted 3 seconds. That's all I gave myself. 3 seconds to process the image, her leaning into a man I'd never seen, laughing like I hadn't heard her laugh in months, with that dangerous softness around her eyes that she used to save for me. Then I stepped back into the elevator before she could turn. But the elevator door didn't close fast enough. Because just before it shut, he glanced at me and smiled, like he knew something I didn't. I should have left. That would have been the smart thing to do. Walk out, toss the truffle bag in the trash, drive home, maybe sleep in my car. But no, I stood there in that damn elevator like a kid who just got caught peeking behind a magician's curtain. I pressed the G button 3 times before realizing the elevator wasn't even moving. She must have pressed the emergency hold to wait for a friend, or maybe, God help me, for him. I pressed the button again, harder, as if force could reverse the evening. Then the doors opened, but not on the ground floor. Someone had called it from above. I panicked and hit the first button I could find, the mezzanine, and ducked out like I was hiding from the cops. Found myself wandering through a dim hallway stacked with event furniture and empty champagne buckets, trying to remember how I got here. How we got here. How this woman, my Ivy, became someone I had to watch like a stranger through glass. I sat on a folding chair in the corner, still gripping that pathetic little gift bag. The tissue paper had started to crinkle in my sweaty hand. The bag looked like something a child would give to a teacher. I felt so stupid. I had bought it because she'd mentioned, in passing, that she missed the truffles from our trip to Sonoma. That was 3 years ago. I remembered. She didn't. The hallway echoed with muted music and laughter from the rooftop. Every laugh made my stomach twist. Was it hers? Was it his? Were they talking about me right now? The dull, anxious husband who doesn't even know how to fit in at a party? I finally made my way back up, this time through the service stairs like some ghost haunting the venue. I kept to the side, behind pillars, avoiding the lights. I didn't even know what I was looking for, a second chance to catch them again? Proof I hadn't imagined it. And then I saw it. The moment that confirmed everything. She wasn't just talking to him. She was showing him something on her phone. They stood close, his hand on the small of her back, her screen tilted toward him. She was smiling that closed-lip smile she does when she's being secretive, the one I used to think was cute, until tonight. Then she laughed again. And this time, she leaned her head on his shoulder. I felt something inside me fray. Not snap. Not yet. Just fray. Quietly. I stepped further into the shadows. My foot hit something metal, an ice bucket maybe, and it clattered just loud enough to draw attention. He turned. He saw me. But this time, he didn't just smile. He winked. Like this was a game. Like I was already losing. I froze. I don't know why that stupid little wink rattled me more than the shoulder touch, or the whispering, or even the arm graze, but it did. Because it wasn't smug. It wasn't even mocking. It was worse than that. It was knowing. Like he'd been waiting for me to see him. Like I was finally caught up to a story that had already been written, and I was the only one who didn't know the ending. I backed away, half expecting Ivy to turn around, notice I was standing there like a stray dog, and come rushing over, flustered and guilty, trying to explain everything. But she didn't. She didn't even glance in my direction. She kept talking, kept laughing, kept being herself, just not the version that belonged to me. I made my way back down the stairs, slower this time, like my limbs had lost interest in supporting me. Every step echoed. Each one sounded final. I walked out of the venue and sat in my car for 22 minutes. I remember the exact time because I stared at the dashboard clock the entire time, watching the minutes tick by while I replayed everything I saw like a bad surveillance tape. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the steering wheel. That would have made it real. No, I just sat there, hands clenched, truffle bag still in my lap like a cursed object. Eventually, I drove. Not home. Just around. I needed noise. Movement. I ended up in a 24-hour diner 2 neighborhoods over, the kind with flickering neon signs and sticky booths. I ordered coffee. Didn't drink it. The waitress, Candace, according to her tag, asked if I was okay. I told her I was waiting for someone. That was a lie. No one was coming. Especially not Ivy. I pulled out my phone. Opened her Instagram. Nothing recent. Just curated snapshots of our life. Smiling selfies, plated brunches, anniversary quotes. I scrolled further. March 2nd. A boomerang of her and coworkers clinking glasses. Lars was in the background. I zoomed in. There was something in the way he looked at her, even then. That low-burning intensity. And there was something in her expression, too. Not joy, exactly, but something more dangerous. Anticipation. I did something next that I'm not proud of. I logged into her email. I know, but I couldn't sit in that booth and keep pretending that this was all in my head. I knew her password. She never changed it. Same one she's had since college. A combination of her childhood dog and the street she grew up on. I typed it in, and I found something. A folder. Buried. Unmarked. No subject lines. Just forwarded threads and PDFs. A few HR memos. A schedule. But one email stood out. No message body, just an attachment. I downloaded it. It was a PowerPoint presentation. Nothing strange at first, just slides about brand alignment and market goals. I almost closed it out, until I saw the final slide. A photo. It was Ivy and Lars, sitting at a table that wasn't ours, in a place I'd never been, sharing a bottle of red wine I couldn't afford. Her hand was on his. His was on her thigh. And the file name? Mock client dinner _ actual. Not a joke. Not a test. Not a misunderstanding. And definitely not mock. I sat there staring at that slide like it was a crime scene photo. I zoomed in, zoomed out, swiped back, then forward again, as if the photo might magically disappear. But there they were, frozen in the glow of expensive candlelight. Ivy leaning into Lars with a smirk that didn't belong to me anymore. His hand on her thigh wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It was ownership. And the part that haunted me the most was her expression. She didn't look caught off guard. She didn't look hesitant. She looked comfortable. I couldn't stop shaking. My hands had that numb buzz, like after holding a steering wheel too long during a storm. I closed the file. Opened it again. Read the file name 3 more times just to make sure I hadn't hallucinated it. Mock client dinner _ actual. The caps lock on the last word felt mocking, deliberate, like a wink in digital form. Still, a twisted part of me hoped it was just a work dinner. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe the photo was taken out of context. Maybe she'd explain it all with that calm, calculated voice she uses when she thinks I'm overreacting. Babe, that wasn't what it looked like. It was part of the pitch. It was a joke. Someone edited it. You always assumed the worst. Except I hadn't. Not until now. I paid for the coffee I didn't drink, tipped Candace too much, and drove home in silence. The kind of silence that presses against your skull and makes your ears ring. Our apartment looked the same as always. Neat, quiet, with her heels kicked off by the door and her cardigan draped lazily over the armrest. She always treated the living room like a dressing room. I used to think it was charming. She wasn't home yet. Of course not. It was 12:42 a.m. I sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling through the same 5 photos of her and Lars, wondering what I'd say when she finally walked in. Should I pretend I didn't see it? Should I wait for her to lie to me and trap herself? Should I scream? Cry? Pack a bag? The lock turned at 1:07. She walked in like nothing was wrong. Hair slightly windblown, makeup still flawless, cheeks flushed from wine and laughter. "You're still up?" she said, hanging her purse like she hadn't just walked out of someone else's arms and into mine. I didn't answer, just stared. She tilted her head. "What's wrong?" I asked one question. Just one. "Who's Lars?" She blinked. Once. Twice. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, but the sentence never formed. That was all the confirmation I needed. You've been in his arms. In restaurants I've never seen. Sharing wine I didn't pour for you. You're laughing like I stopped being real to you. She sighed, and that sigh broke something inside me. Not because she denied it, or defended herself, or even apologized. No, it was the sigh you give when a child starts asking too many questions about the world, when it's easier to dismiss them than explain. She sat down across from me, smoothed her skirt like we were at a job interview, and finally said, "It's complicated, Elliot." I could have screamed, could have flipped the table, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, "So explain it. Make it uncomplicated." And that's when she said the words that would twist this entire story inside out. I didn't know who he really was. Not until tonight. That sentence. Just like that. Like she had just found out something I didn't know. Like somehow she had been blindsided too. I wanted to ask what she meant. Wanted to demand details. But before I could get the words out, she reached into her purse, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and slid it across the table to me. A printed photo. Of Lars. Standing outside a house I recognized. My brother's house. For a few seconds, my brain refused to connect the dots. The photo was grainy, like it had been printed in a hurry on a cheap office printer, but the scene was unmistakable. Lars stood on the front porch of a tan brick house with those ugly blue shutters I've hated since childhood. The overgrown ivy crawling up the right side, the faded house number, 418, and the chipped garden gnome my mother used to call Franklin. That was my brother's house. The one he inherited from our grandparents. The one I hadn't been invited to in nearly a year. And there was Lars, dressed like a GQ model, leaning casually against the railing like he belonged there. Smiling. My voice came out low and hoarse. "Where did you get this?" Ivy didn't answer at first. She was staring at me, studying my face, like she wasn't sure whether to pity me or be afraid of me. Then she said, "He gave it to me." "What?" "Tonight." He handed it to me and said, "Maybe you should ask your husband who I am before you get too comfortable." It felt like all the air in the room had been sucked into a vacuum. I didn't know what to say, what to feel. My mind started spiraling. Had Lars and my brother known each other? Were they connected? Why hadn't I ever heard his name before? Was this some twisted setup? A test? I reached for my phone and pulled up the only recent photo I had with my brother, from last Thanksgiving, the last time we'd spoken without arguing. I zoomed in, scanned the background. No sign of Lars. "He said he met you there," Ivy added. "That you two talked." I scoffed. "That's a lie. I've never seen this man before tonight." Her eyes narrowed. "Then why does he have photos of you?" I froze. "What?" She reached back into her purse and pulled out another folded sheet. This one wasn't printed. It was glossy, almost professionally done. On it, a series of candid shots. Me at the gas station. Me coming out of the pharmacy. Me sitting alone in the car outside my office, eating lunch like some forgotten prop in a low-budget movie. All recent. All taken without me knowing. My mouth went dry. She placed the photo on the table like a final card in a poker game and whispered, "He's been following you, Elliot." I couldn't breathe. My entire chest tightened with a sickening kind of awareness. The way you feel right before a car crash, when you know something is wrong but you're too late to change it. "And you didn't think to tell me any of this sooner?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I didn't know, Elliot," she snapped, suddenly rising. "I thought he was just some harmless flirt." "Yes, I flirted, okay? Because you haven't looked at me in months. But I didn't know I was walking into some kind of game." Her voice broke, and for a moment I didn't know if she was going to scream or cry or both. But I was still stuck on the photos. The cold calculation of them. The angles. The fact that Lars had clearly been watching me long before Ivy ever met him. Something else was going on here. Something bigger than a flirty coworker and a crumbling marriage. "I think you need to talk to your brother," she said finally, quieter now. I laughed bitterly. "I haven't spoken to him in almost a year." "Then maybe it's time," she whispered. "Because Lars knew your mother's name. He knew the story about your dad's car accident. He told me your middle name. He told me things I didn't even know." She looked genuinely shaken now, the kind of shaken you can't fake. And for the first time that night, I wasn't sure if she was the only one keeping secrets in this house. I picked up the phone. My hands shook as I dialed. And when my brother finally answered on the third ring, all he said was, "You figured it out, didn't you?" There's a certain silence that comes after a sentence like that. Not just silence, but a collapse of assumptions, of stories you've told yourself to survive, of entire versions of your life. "You figured it out, didn't you?" my brother said. as if this was something we both knew was coming. As if I had been walking toward this moment blindfolded for years, and the knot had just slipped loose. I didn't respond at first. I couldn't. I just sat there on the edge of the couch, Ivy standing behind me with her arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was trying to hold herself together. I could hear her breathing, shallow, fast, like she was listening in on something sacred, something she was never supposed to witness. His name isn't Lars, my brother continued after a pause. Or at least, not to me. I swallowed hard. Then who is he? There was a long, bitter exhale on the other end of the line. His real name is Caleb. That name didn't mean anything to me. Not yet. I waited for it to click, to hit me with the same velocity as the photographs had. But nothing came. You were too young to remember him, my brother went on. But I wasn't. I was 13 when it happened. When what happened? I asked. My voice came out too loud, like I just realized I was the only one in the room who didn't know what story we were living in. He was our foster cousin. Mom and Dad took him in for a while after his parents died. It was supposed to be temporary, 3 months, maybe 4. But he was weird, dangerous. He used to kill animals, hide our things, lie about everything. Then one day, something happened between him and Mom. She didn't tell me what, just packed his stuff and drove him away. Said he was going to a facility, that we'd never see him again. The words landed like bricks inside my skull. I rubbed my eyes, trying to picture a boy named Caleb, trying to excavate some forgotten memory. But it was just darkness. A blank space in my brain. A missing reel in the film. I thought he disappeared. My brother continued, his voice lower now. But a few months ago, he showed up at my door. Same creepy smile. Same dead eyes. Said he wanted to reconnect. I told him to get lost. Then why is he in my wife's office? I asked, heat rising in my chest. Because he told me he'd ruin everything if I didn't help him. I went still. You helped him. I whispered. I didn't have a choice, my brother said quickly. He had stuff on me. Old stuff. Things I never wanted you or Mom to know about. He said he didn't want money. He wanted proximity. A way in. I felt physically sick. So you told him about Ivy? About me? I didn't know what he was planning, my brother said. He asked where you worked. What kind of life you had. I didn't think he'd go this far. My head was pounding. All this time, I thought I was the one being cheated on. Lied to. Betrayed. And yet, it wasn't just Ivy. This wasn't just about some romantic betrayal. This was a coordinated act. A long game. A setup. He's been watching us, I said, almost to myself. He gave Ivy pictures of me. He knew my middle name. He's obsessed, my brother said. He always has been. Obsessed with being part of this family. With replacing what he lost. Maybe even replacing you. I looked at Ivy. She was pale now, her arms hanging loosely by her sides. He told me we had chemistry, she whispered. That he felt familiar. He made sure of that, my brother said flatly. I stood, pacing, trying to make sense of it all. Why now? I asked. Why come back now after all these years? My brother hesitated. And then he said the one thing I didn't expect. Because Mom died 3 weeks ago. Everything inside me stopped. What are you talking about? She never told you. Didn't want to worry you. It happened fast. Heart failure. Caleb showed up 2 days later. Said she owed him the life she stole. Said we all did. My knees buckled. I sat down hard, breath leaving me in a rush. Ivy rushed over, but I waved her off. That's when I realized this had never been about Ivy. Or me. This was a revenge story. But the worst part? We still had no idea what his endgame really was. I barely slept that night. My body tried, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying the phone call. Every pause, every reveal, every sickening word. By the time the sky began to gray and the world outside remembered how to be normal again, I had made my decision. I was going to find him. Not call. Not message. Not wait for another cryptic delivery or a wink across a rooftop. I wanted answers. No, I needed them. This thing had gone too far, and whatever Caleb wanted, it wasn't going to end with a few photographs and a few broken hearts. I could feel it in my bones. The way some people feel storms coming. This wasn't over. Ivy tried to stop me when I grabbed my keys. She stood in the doorway, wearing one of my old hoodies like armor, her voice a blend of guilt and worry. What are you going to do if you find him? She asked. What if he's dangerous? He's already dangerous, I muttered. I just didn't notice until now. She didn't argue after that, just nodded and whispered, Be careful. I started with the only address I had, my brother's house. I hadn't seen him in person in nearly a year, and when he opened the door, I barely recognized him. He looked older, thinner, like someone who had been sleeping with one eye open for far too long. He let me in without a word. The place was a mess. Pizza boxes, unopened mail, dishes in the sink. The chaos of someone who no longer expected visitors. Or maybe no longer trusted them. We sat at the kitchen table, a warped oak slab stained with ring marks and bad decisions. I don't know where he is now, my brother said, but I can show you where he was. He led me to a storage bin in the garage and pulled out a folder. Inside were maps, photos, receipts. He had been tracking Caleb too, quietly, secretly, out of fear. Hotel stays under different names. Surveillance stills. One address appeared more than once. A remote property outside the city limits, rented under a shell company. One photo showed Caleb standing near a red door. I think that's where he's living now, my brother said. Why didn't you go to the police? He looked at me like I was naive. Go to the police and say what? That the guy I let back into my life 20 years after he was institutionalized is flirting with my sister-in-law and giving my brother anxiety attacks? There's no crime. Not yet. I left that afternoon. The drive was long, winding through forgotten roads, past rusting fences and wilted gas stations. The address led to what looked like an abandoned motel, half swallowed by trees, with vines crawling up the siding and a flickering porch light that must have been running on pure spite. I parked across the street and waited. Watched. At exactly 5:42 p.m. he stepped out of room 6. Still Lars to the world. Still polished, still smug. But this time, I noticed it. The twitch in his jaw, the stiffness in his shoulders, the way he scanned the parking lot with cold calculation. He was expecting someone. Maybe not me, but someone. I waited until he was gone, then crossed the street. I didn't knock. I broke in. The room was dim and smelled like old leather and antiseptic. It wasn't just a motel room. It was a shrine. My photos were everywhere, taped to walls, clipped to string, pinned above a corkboard labeled Target A. Ivy's photos were there too. Then my brother's. Even my childhood house, our high school, my first apartment. He had files. Timelines. He had been watching us for years. But what made my blood truly run cold was the center wall. Taped to it was a blown-up photo of my wedding day. Ivy and me, caught mid-laugh as we stepped out of the chapel. Over Ivy's face, someone had scribbled a single word in red marker. Correction. And underneath that, a post-it note that read, Phase 2 begins after confession. I stood there frozen, every nerve in my body lit like a fuse. This wasn't a game. This wasn't even about revenge anymore. Caleb wasn't trying to ruin me. He was trying to replace me. I stood in that motel room surrounded by the twisted storyboard of my life, trying to steady my breath as the walls seemed to close in. The photos, the strings, the scribbled words, they weren't just obsessive. They were architectural, deliberate, designed. And in the middle of it all, that phrase, Phase 2 begins after confession. I had no idea what Caleb meant by that. If it was a plan to humiliate me, frame me, destroy me, or something darker. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to wait for it to happen. I left the room as I'd entered, without a sound, and drove straight to the police. I didn't think they'd take me seriously. But then I showed them the photos. The wall. The notes. The surveillance files. I told them about the fake name, the manipulation, the stalking, and Ivy's confession. And for once, the system didn't laugh. The officer who took my report, a calm, older woman named Detective Griggs, said she'd seen patterns like this before. That it was rare, but not unheard of. That Caleb fit the profile of someone who escalated slowly, then fast. They took it seriously. Within 24 hours, they had a warrant. But by the time they returned to the motel, the room had been cleared out. Completely. Like he was never there. Only one thing remained. A single Polaroid on the nightstand. Me and Ivy at our wedding. No scribbles this time. No notes. Just the image. She cried when I came home. I think we both did. For different reasons. The days that followed were blurry. Meetings, statements, safety checks. Ivy and I stayed in a hotel under a temporary protection notice. The air between us was thick with things we still hadn't said. But there was also something else. Effort. Honesty. A kind of fragile, quiet rebuilding that didn't feel fake. One night, she turned to me in the dark and whispered, "I'm sorry I let someone like him in. I should have seen it. And for once, I didn't deflect. I didn't say it's fine or don't worry. I just took her hand and said, we both let parts of us drift. But we're here now. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. Weeks passed, then months. Caleb never reappeared. The police suspected he'd fled the state, possibly even the country. But there was no sign of him. His fingerprints didn't match any national database. His real identity, they said, might have been constructed years ago, a ghost in the system. And yet, I stopped being afraid, because I had faced the worst of him. I had seen the version of myself I didn't like, the passive, shrinking man who let life happen to him. And I didn't want to be that version anymore. Ivy and I started over. Couples counseling, morning walks, small traditions, Saturday pancakes, movie nights without phones. We were cautious with each other, but we were also real. More real than we'd been in years. And one day, while cleaning out the closet, I found the old gift bag. The truffles, still unopened. I almost threw it out. But instead, I walked over to her, held it out with both hands, and said, I still remember Sonoma. She smiled, really smiled, and said, so do I. That night, we shared them in bed, laughing at how stale they'd gotten, letting the taste of bitter chocolate remind us of everything we almost lost and everything we still had. I don't know where Caleb is now, but I do know where I am. Home.